So, my name is Jens Steuer. I'm a professor for genome informatics here at Bielefeld University, and I'm a director of the CIF. And it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce to you Professor Dana Ballard, who is a professor for computer science at the University of Texas at Austin. His research interest is the computational theory of the brain with an emphasis on human vision and motor control. He has been to Bielefeld several times, I understand, most notably as a fellow of the CIF research group Competition and Priority Control in Mind and Brain in 2012 and 13. And today he will talk to us about the statement or question, why the brain needs a body. Please.
Well, I have been to Bielefeld many times. In fact, I come to Germany often, and I calculated that I've spent more time at Bielefeld than all the other places I've been in. And it's always, it feels like a little bit like home to me. And I am one corner German. It's a paternal grandmother. Okay, so why the brain needs a body. I sent in to my title to ZIF, and they said, I don't think so. We have one for you. But it's a very interesting title, and we're going to try to answer this question. And since my training is in vision, vision is going to be featured. This is just to show you that Texas does have some water. The most getting started, this is really a very, very, very important start, is that in human primates are distinguished by having a very small fovea. It's in the center for gaze, and 1 degree, if you want to know what 1 degree is, hold out your thumb. It's that width. Inside that tiny area, the spatial resolution goes up by a factor of 100. And so that means that the next innovation is you have to move eyes very quickly up to 700 degrees per second to move your eye to the right spot in the course of doing vision. So this is going to be featured in a lot of our explanations. The other thing we should look at is we have to adjust to is that the code coming from your retina is highly coded. So nothing like a vision, images comes through. But I'm using this is from KTH in Zurich. They built a camera to try to model the code, and here's the images you would get while you're moving around. And the middle pixel here is you're seeing every time it changes from black to white, you see a little pop. And if you're a biologist recording, this is what the traffic sounds like. This is a picture. And so what we're just trying to show you that the code coming from the retina is not the image you see. It's sort of like the postal code of the image that you see. So we have to move on here. And let's talk about some of the anatomical constraints. And so, of course, on the left is the eyeball, the retina, and then you have the cells in the retina compress the image by a factor of 1,000,000, and then they send it to this little nucleus here, the thalamus, and in a computer science terminology, we could think of this as an input-output port here, and so it's a way station, and then the nerves in this way station then complete the transit to the memory. So your brain mostly is memory, and the visual first stage of visual memory, V1, is at the back. And so you have a bus here of axons carrying the signal here. But what the interesting thing is that there are also fibers going back. And the amount of fibers going back is 10 times the fibers going forward. And so ecologically, what your vision is doing in the act of seeing is asking questions. So it's question, 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 and you can move your eyes about 3 gaze points per second. And so that's your rate of questioning answering. Maybe we should see this happening. This is my colleague, Mary Hayhoe, has a lab, and this is from her lab. This is eye tracking. And now we're back on the University of Texas campus, and we're going to cross the street with the students, and there, you'll see the eye track, and every stop on the eye track is a question, and your task all of a sudden is to figure out what these questions are. I'm going to help you. Okay, curb, potential mate, obstacle, planning, path planning, the car coming, curb, we made it. Now, I'm wondering if you're believing me that there's actually a computation that's downloaded to answer those questions. Well, let's go back in Mary's lab, and in a virtual environment, what you're going to see is that you're going to pick up blocks and put them in conveyor belts. And so I'm going to help you. The crosshairs, of course, that's the eyes. And the two red dots are fingers. We have force feedback on the fingers, so it really feels like you're picking a block. And here we go. And the cue set of blue, and blue goes on the left conveyor belt. So you're doing, these are graduate students, and they're just doing tons of these. But once in a while, the change of the block has changed. You're saying one of these CATS trials. 5% of the trials have something like this happen. The subjects are told, any changes, throw it away. Don't put it on the conveyor belt. So what happened here is that even though the color changes when you were looking at it, so on your red is red is coming, but you put it where the block is put where the blue should go. Now, why did that happen? It's because you already are thinking of the answer to this question, because when you pick it up, you have to know what color it is, so you have to ask your question, what color is this? So in your brain, it's tagged as blue. And so you can't keep asking, is it blue, is it blue, is it blue, is it blue, right? If you had any ancestors that did this, and if I combine the evolution with the mafia, they've been taken care of. So, okay, so here's your question. Now you're thinking, okay, it's these academics in the lab again. I mean, this doesn't happen in real life. So, well, first we can see our subject doing this, and this is what real life looks like for a subject, but we have to move on. And
most of us think we're pretty observant.
Probably
but with a bit of mind control, I wanted to see if I could make these people take even the most obvious things for granted.
It helps to see it again. Now, remember that guy's face.
Yeah. You see that church down there?
Yeah, straight through there.
And then you keep going down.
Sorry, which way?
It's not the same guy.
Now. And then you walk down 2 or 3 blocks, and Trinity Church is on the right-hand side.
Now we'll have to go on, but the thought is, a lot of people think that's kind of like a party trick. Oh, it's those psychologists at it again. But no. This is how your visual system works normally. Is that your most of the fibers coming back are going to the towards the retina, and so most of your vision is agenda-driven. That gets you through the case. You're following some agenda. And sometimes, though, you need interrupts. You didn't get an interrupt with the little red cube. No interrupt. But something has to interrupt you. I mean, what can interrupt, what to me, now these kind of microphones are pointed in different directions. I could spend the rest of the time just staring at them. No. It's important to somehow titrate the interrupts. And this is always confusing for me until I read this brilliant paper. This is a really nice paper. Everybody should have a look at it. These are rats running on a treadmill. And so sometimes the visual input that they see on the left is appropriate for their treadmill speed, but other times it's not. And so here's the finding. I still got goosebumps thinking about this. Here's our thalamus, and we're looking at the connections. Now that you have a special bus, when it's predicted, it goes down this bus, but when it's not predicted, it goes down this bus. And this is big news, because if a rat's a mammal, and so basically the difference between us and rats is a couple extra apps that download, but basically we have that architecture too, of course. So, but it really helps me to think that, okay, what can interrupt me is what cannot be predicted by my instantaneous agenda. Now I can think, okay, now I can sort of get a foothold on why this kind of might be a manageable problem. So there we go. Well, time to move on. The other thing we should talk about is, how does the brain get programs at all? Basically, look, you can't make big jumps, but if you have a lot of existing code and something comes along that can be seen as an add-on to the code you already have, it sits in the hippocampal area till you go to sleep, and then it gets added into the code you already have. And the other thing is, when you have these programs, how do you know what's a good one or a bad one? It's settled. The Nobel Prize has been handed out for this, and that is earlier, and this is Wolfgang Schultz at work. Some people think he might get one too, but basically, you're a neurotransmitter. I call it the neuro in honor of the euro, is marked for the value of your program. So a monkey is reaching into a box to get an apple, and when he or she gets it, you get a reward. It's handed out immediately. But now, if in the experiment it's changed so that he waits for it, or she waits for a trigger, and then you go for the apple, the reward is given out at the start of the program. This is very important. And now there's a complication here, so to get the reward handed out earlier. And it's the further in future you have to go, the reward is discounted. So that's why this is a big one, and it's getting less and less here. So basically, you get a reward that's expected discounted reward. And it's handed out at the time when you're firing up your behavior. So we model this, and the idea is that, well, if these questions that you're asking, we try to think very, very, very abstractly what the program might be. And so we can, and the idea is that you have gazillions of these, but you can fire up handily a small number of times, because if you had a lot, they would interfere. So this is our model. This is Walter. And he's doing three things. He has to stay on this sidewalk, and he has to avoid these blue things, but then he has to pick up the litter, which is the purple things. We'll get him going. There he goes. And he's simultaneously run these things. If you're in a virtual environment, you can pick things up by sucking them into your body. There he goes. Okay, so let's lift up his mental hood and see what's underneath. And this is as involved as it's going to get. But here he is up here, and the space in front of him, he's represented. And this little quadrilateral is this. So that in the program, there's two crucial things. One is the policy. What to do. And the other thing is, what's it worth to me? And so here in the litter, the vision gives you the nearest litter can, and that's the angle, the bearing, the angle and distance to it. And then on his little mental map here, he's here. And he's been learning this, and so this is all burned in at this point. And so the policy is very boring, but it's to head towards the litter. But here's the payoff here, is that this was learned by reinforcement and modeled dopamine, and so that you have the discount value. You have the value of going in that direction. So I almost want to stop for questions, but you're supposed to have understood what I said. Okay, so but if you have more of these, they're all the same, and they just have discount profiles here, and they have different policies. And so here they might not agree, but since you know the value of each one of these, you can take a weighted average and go that direction. So you have a right, a left, a left. You can see all these lefts. You're not in America. But okay, but we got, all right. So but to get back our message here, let's get to vision. So we might think, okay, yeah, Dana, you've explained this to us. If we're moving the eyes around, we'll just reward the gaze when it goes to the right place. It turns out that won't work, because for eye movements, they're special. In the reward for going to the right place and the wrong place, the difference is too small to be mathematically tractable. So, but I had a very, very brilliant graduate student that figured this out for me. He says, look, what happens is when you don't look at something, your internal brain model starts to drift, and it gets fuzzy. Oops. Get back to, here we go. And if you look at it, then you can clean things up. And the value of looking is that your calculation of the reward in the drifted map is not as good as looking at it. And so basically, the value of for looking is reducing the uncertainty in your mental map. Well, please don't do this, but on the freeway, I've driven and closed my eyes, and I can tell you that 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, not a problem. But when you get to 4 seconds, 5 seconds, you think you might have drifted into the lane next door, and the shots are coming, the adrenaline and shocks. But if you have been paying attention, got the key point is I didn't have to close my eyes, because basically what I needed to do is look at the right place at the right time. And if I forced myself to look down at the radio, it would be just as good as closing my eyes. So let's try this out, an experiment. And we're back in virtual reality, and the crosshairs is the eyes, of course. And we have a task here. It's follow the red car and keep the speed at 30. That's miles an hour. Okay, so here we go. There's the red car, and okay, we'll follow. And then you can see there's a trade-off. You have to keep looking at the speedometer, but at the same time the car is kind of noisy and up front, and it might be getting ahead of you, so you keep constantly sampling. So the two modules are running, but they're drifting, and so I have to keep updating my gaze. My moment is coming up. Here we go. There's nothing in the mirror, but you're running the program that says, when you change lanes, you better look in the mirror. Okay. So here we go. So that was fun, wasn't it? All right, so now I'm going to take us more into the future. So my field, machine learning, is undergoing revolution because you can build these very, very deep networks, and the algorithms converge, and it takes a while, but not like it was before the deep learning revolution. So what are you looking here? Is basically you have two sets of deep networks, and now the tiny little modules you're looking before now are become complicated, but what they do is rather simple. So what you're doing here is you're playing a computer game. This is the new battlefield for machine learning. And what's happening here is that you have a network that's trying to figure out what's on the screen, and then another network that's trying to figuring out what is your action. Usually shoot something on here. So here they shoot something, and what's on the screen network here. And I have a brilliant graduate student at the moment, and he had the idea that what we should do is we should have humans play this, track their gaze, and use that as a training signal for the top network, and then basically, then send that information down to the action network, and it'll help. And it does. We got a paper out of it. So, but let's have wait, I have to set this up a little bit. So what you're going to see is in Sequest, you're going to see the eye moving from the human player, and then you're going to see the network's prediction of where those would be. If the board looked like this, this is where the eyes would be. So when this patch of predictions is mapping the actual eyes, it means that you're doing the right thing. So here we go. One more. So here we go. Sequest. I've never played it myself, but here you go. There's divers, there's submarines, there's lots of things are happening. And then if you run out of gas, oxygen, you can go down and get some more here. But I think you can get the impression that this is rather demanding to actually do this. And I was kind of amazed that this guy and his partner got this to work. But it's pretty impressive. Okay, so it might be time to wrap up here. So here's the answer, is the brain needs the body to mediate the interactions of the world. So what I hope I got across is that what keeps in the memory is a model of the world. There's a very, very, very elaborate model of the world in there. If I'm looking out here and seeing this beautiful picture, it's because the neurons inside the skull are doing that for me. I was a younger man. We always heard, there's no picture in the head. There's no picture in the head. But now my response is, where else could it be? But here, so the other thing, so here's the bottom line coming, is that that picture and your agenda, more importantly, is created with actions in the world. And you could see that action is very, very, very sophisticated and very, also very, very efficient to be able to do these things in real time. And so now I have to, of course, the thing is, the people think that professors just sit and take naps, and these guys do all the work, and it's partially true. And then this is my brilliant student, and this is former student, Konstantin Roskopf. He's another brilliant guy. He's a professor at Darmstadt. How he ever got that? He just walked in. They made him a professor. I don't know what they did. Anyway, and here's some of the other gangs, and then Ziff. I really feel an affection for Ziff, and I would probably the best way to finish is just say thank you.